Pet Sematary is a 1989 horror movie, directed by Mary Lambert, and is based on the novel by Stephen King. The story revolves around a young family, who move to a proper death trap of a neighborhood. Massive 18-wheelers pass their house at full speed, at all hours of the day and night. Sounds pretty dangerous, doesn't it? Well, that's okay, at least the parents of this young family are on the ball. Only minutes into the movie we see as the couple's young daughter nearly breaks her neck on a rope swing, and their toddler is mere feet away from being splattered by a truck. Doesn't really bode well, to be honest. Thankfully, their toddler, Gage, is rescued by their neighbor Judd, an absolute unit of a man, who lives across the street. Judd, who I shall now refer to as Herman Munster, is a jolly giant, and hits it off with the family straight away, despite their piss-poor parenting skills. That night, Lewis, also known as Terrible Parent Number 1, chats to Mr. Munster over a few cold brewskis on the porch, and learns that a pathway on his property leads to a cemetery for pets. Eager to find out more, he sets out with his wife Rachel, also known as Terrible Parent Number 2, with Mr. Munster and the kids. Apparently, the cemetery was created by broken-hearted children, for the pets killed from the busy main road. A pretty weird premise, but alright then. Mr. Munster assures their daughter Ellie, that the cemetery is not a scary place, but in fact it's really weird and eerie. So we have a creepy cemetery, a stone's throw away from the house, and a super dangerous highway right outside the front door. Why on earth would a family move to this beautiful little corner of hell? Well, the daddy of the family is a doctor, and almost immediately into his first day on the job, we see a young man who has been wiped out by a truck. Half his brain is hanging out of his skull, but Dr. Lewis tries to save the boy's life anyway. Unfortunately, and not surprisingly, the young man, known as Pascal, doesn't make it, and later that night, his ghost appears to Lewis, warning him not to travel beyond the pet cemetery. Lewis awakes the next morning, believing his encounter with Pascal was all a dream, but his mucky trotters prove otherwise. Next, we see the family preparing for a Thanksgiving getaway. Lewis decides to stay in Maine, much to the annoyance of his missus, and yet again shows how much of a crap human he is, after Mr. Munster discovers the family's beloved pet cat Church has been killed in a road accident. Lewis plans on burying the cat the following morning, without telling his daughter a damn thing, but Mr. Munster suggests there may be a better solution. The doctor is curious, and follows his neighbor beyond the pet cemetery. Hang on, didn't Pascal specifically say not to do that? And after going ass over tit, he makes it to an ancient burial ground, and buries Church, on Mr. Munster's instruction. It's all a bit odd, but lo and behold, the next day, the pussy is back from the dead, but not as we know him. Cats can be dicks at the best of times, but this one is especially dickish. He also stinks to high heaven, and Ellie doesn't want to be around the minging moggy. Intrigued, and proper freaked out, Lewis talks to his neighbor about the history of the burial ground's powers, and whether or not it can resurrect humans. The answer is yes, but after we hear a cautionary tale about a disastrous resurrection from decades past, Lewis discovers that its consequences could prove fatal. In another display of fantastic parenting, we see the tragic, and depressingly shocking, death of the family's son Gage. And there we have it. A family mourning the death of their toddler, a spooky burial ground with the ability to raise the dead, and Herman Munster getting shit-faced on his front porch. Will the family ever get over the death of their son? And will Lewis be tempted to try and resurrect Gage, against the wishes of everyone that knows about the burial ground's magical potential? Pet Sematary is a dark and twisted take on grief in all forms. Its themes stayed with me for a few days after watching, especially after Gage's death, but after this point, the story spirals into the realms of the ridiculous. My favorite part of the movie, and by the way, this is a massive spoiler if you are planning on watching it, involved Gage's murderous rampage around the neighbor's house, and culminated in a frankly absurd homicide. Imagine being killed by a preschooler in your own home. Pretty hilarious. I particularly enjoyed the acting from Fred Gwynne, who played Judd Crandall, the friendly, yet ominous neighbor. Standing at 6'5", and with his low baritone voice, he could have easily been portrayed as the villain of the story, but here we see him as a grandfather figure for the kids, and a kind of mentor for Louis. I must admit though, I found it difficult to understand all his lines. His southern drawl merged words together mid-sentence, but I didn't mind. He is after all, the one and only Herman Munster. Some of the scenes featuring Rachel's dying sister Zelda are the most disturbing in the film, as we see her younger self attempting to nurse her. She is haunted by visions of her sister's skeletal body, and the guilt she experienced knowing she could not end her suffering. Pet Sematary was universally panned by critics, but was a successful box office hit. Its poignant subject matter make it worth a watch, but it falls short of being a horror classic. I personally enjoyed it, but the final third of the movie is undeniably ludicrous. Check it out if you're looking for something disturbing, but don't take it too seriously. Thanks for watching my review, and feel free to watch some other videos if you know what's good for you. Cheers babes.